Vantage Venues for another episode of Steal from the Best. A little different today. We have a glass of wine in front of us because we're lucky enough to have Erin Henderson, Toronto sommelier and Toronto socialite.
Yeah.
Erin, you're not. We're going to jump right into it. You're not a shy person. Presenting certainly comes naturally to you. And one of your earliest jobs was as a news broadcaster with 680. Can you tell us a bit about that experience and how it prepared you for life as a somewhat famous sommelier?
Famous sommelier. I wouldn't say I'm a famous sommelier. I think it's really quite flattering that you do. So thanks very much for having me on. I really appreciate it. But yeah, so a quick snippet of my life as I know it so far. My first career was in. I heard your little Slurpee there.
Did the microphone pick that up?
It did, but I like it because
you taught me that move.
I know I did.
Yes.
You slurp brilliantly. Who says you can't suck and blow at the same time?
What am I doing? I'm oxygenating the.
Yeah, aerating it.
Aerating,
yeah, a little bit.
Right.
Yeah,
yeah.
Like decanting in your mouth, only different. So so basically, my first career when I was really young, like from 0 to 20, I was in acting. I even went to university for drama. All of that kind of stuff. And eventually I realized I didn't have enough love for acting and drama to be able to sustain that career forever and just always be a waitress. And there's nothing wrong with being a waitress. I've been one for many years, but I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. So I thought I would go the much more secure route of being a journalist because, obviously, that was far more secure. Yes. So after I dropped out of university and I moved to Banff with $300 in my pocket, which was my parents' proudest moment, I worked in Banff for a little bit, came back, worked at a Red Lobster and was like, okay, what am I going to do if I'm not going, I'm doing exactly what I said I didn't want to do, and I went into broadcasting. So I went to journalism school, worked really hard, got a fantastic internship at what was CFRB, but now it's just called News Talk 1010. And that started a career of almost a decade in broadcasting. So I was a broadcaster for CTV, 680, as you mentioned. I wrote for a little bit for the Canadian Press. And and then after that tenure, after it started, the shine started to dull, I left broadcasting and I became a sommelier. I ended up working for other people. I worked in Toronto for a couple of the top venues, and then eventually left and became an entrepreneur.
So, I mean, that's a huge career shift already.
Yeah.
And you started off in broadcasting and then got into kind of the hospitality side of things. What led you to make that shift?
Well, commitment's not really my thing. So I'm not really a committed individual. No, you know what would happen is I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I didn't realize I wanted to be an entrepreneur. But when I was really young, you end up, I remember one of my earliest memories is not telling my parents, but taking some toys that I no longer needed and having an ad hoc garage sale with some of my other girlfriends down the street. And I was talking like 5 or 6 years old or whatever, and realized like that day we made $50. $50 when you're 5 is pretty good dough. So I always loved doing stuff like that. I was a journalist. I really am attracted to the arts. I'm really attracted to creativity. I'm really attracted to things that make me have to stretch a little bit, that they're not going to be the same thing every day. And journalism was perfect for that, for the time. When I was in journalism, though, I was doing a lot of like heavy news, a lot of politics, a lot of crime. I covered the Queen's Park budget. Those are not typically things that come naturally to me, and those are not, right? Like, those are not typically things that work out well for me. I covered the SARS case. Like, really, that's just not my jam. So I always loved food and wine. When I was really little, my dad was involved in wine, and so it was always part of our table. And in the 80s in Canada, wine was not kind of a thing. But my parents would pour our milk in wine glasses, so while they had a glass of wine, we would be drinking milk out of wine glasses. And then we were able to, that was always part of my thing. I loved throwing parties. I loved that kind of stuff. So when I left journalism, my sister was already a sommelier, having much more fun than I was, so I became a sommelier too.
Wow. Very cool.
Yeah.
So tell us about taking the leap. Like you wanted to do that. You wanted to have your own venture. You had built some experience as a sommelier. Tell us about that leap into your own venture.
Yeah, that's what people ask me the most, right? Mm-hmm. Is like, how do you actually do that? How do you get the bravado? How do you get the courage to take something that's new. Because when I left being a journalist, I had a mortgage, I had a life, right?
Yeah.
I had responsibilities, fiscal responsibilities, things that were serious. If you didn't pay your mortgage or whatever, I had RSP contributions, all of those things. And when I left to start my own company, within a matter of years of leaving journalism, like I had to liquidate my RSPs. I remortgaged my house. I had to live off a line of credit for a while. I did everything that smart people don't want to do. So how did I take the leap, and why did I take the leap? It actually wasn't such a serious transition as you'd think. Earlier you asked me, Andrew, and then I ignored you, but earlier you asked me about what were the skills in journalism that you can apply to being a sommelier or being an entrepreneur. And they're actually very similar, and they're similar skills to just simply being a good person. So even when I was preparing for this podcast, I always want to deliver something that's of value to people. So whether I'm on this podcast or whether I'm running wine school or whether back in the day I was on the radio trying to tell somebody about something important happening in their community, I always want to deliver practical insights and true value. And I always go by that. So whenever we put out a blog, whenever we put out a social media post, whenever we do a wine school, whenever I do a wine tasting, I don't want to just do it because I want the clickbait and I want the glory. That's not going to get you very far. And so I think that when you take that leap, it wasn't so difficult because I had already had those fundamental things. I already had, yes, there's going to be a sense of bravery. Yes, there's going to be a sense of, okay, it's like, I got to make it happen. But a lot of those tools were actually very good. And I could take those tools because when I started the Wine Sisters almost 10 years ago, I had zero budget. And so I just looked on what my skills already were. And I did things like I wrote three columns a week for the Huffington Post. Obviously, the Huffington Post doesn't pay, but it does have great exposure. I wrote a column for Toronto Magazine, which I'm not even sure if it exists anymore, but that was for free. So I knew what I could do was I could rely on my journalism skills to basically shamelessly self-promote in a way that also then delivered value.
Okay. And now it's not only the Wine Sisters, but you've also got Drink Toronto. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a bit about Drink Toronto?
Okay. I started Drink Toronto 3 years ago, and it was really cool. And the Wine Sisters specializes in customized tours to wine country and wine tastings and that kind of thing. And I still do a lot of writing, as I said. So we were invited, by we, I mean my sister and I, we were invited on something called a FAM tour. And that would be to Rioja, which is in Spain, to go visit a couple wineries there. Before we left for Rioja, I had never been to Madrid, so we tacked on our own 3 or 4 days in Madrid. And my sister, I don't even know how she did it. She just stumbled upon a food tour because being a former journalist and just the type of travel I like, I don't want to end up in like the Dundas Square, Madrid. Nothing against Dundas Square, but I want to go where the locals are. I want to discover the place. I want to get to the heartbeat of that particular place. So we ended up on this fabulous food tour. It gave us a sense of direction, showed us places we'd want to revisit, all of those things. And Courtney, that's my sister, Courtney said to me, this is great. Like Toronto doesn't have anything like this. You need to start this in Toronto. But obviously being sommeliers, we'll do it with drinks instead of food. Like this needs to happen. I said, fantastic. Like we'll get that started when we get home. And she said, no, not for me. Like I'm not into, like I'm done. Like the Wine Sisters was it. She owns half the Wine Sisters, but is not necessarily somebody who loves entrepreneurship. So even though she still owns half of the Wine Sisters, she's gone back to work for companies and is still like a great sounding board and all of those things, but not loving entrepreneurship. So I was like, okay, well, this is a great idea. How am I going to, I don't want to do it alone. Doing things alone is lonely. So on that same FAM tour, familiarization tour is what it means, there was a really good colleague of mine. Like I'm not even sure his name is Dick Snyder, prolific food and wine journalist in Toronto. And I had already known him for a few years on a very, being at the same events. And after spending a week with him and some other people, I was like, you're a great guy. You really know a lot about food, wine, all this kind of stuff. Would you be interested? And I thought about it for a few weeks after this. And then eventually I saw him at another event. I was like, let's talk. I think you might be a great partner for this. So he partnered up with me on that. And that was 3 years ago. And so now I run the Wine Sisters, which does, like I said, the tastings. And then with Drink Toronto, it's cool because its niche is wine, beer, and cocktail tours to Toronto's most interesting restaurants, which people find really enticing and really interesting. And then combine the two of them, Drink Toronto and the Wine Sisters, we've partnered for lots of reasons to create things like events like Patio Party, which we've partnered with Vantage Venues for. Similarly, another partnership with Vantage Venues would be our wine school. So it's all like a big love in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was looking at Drink Toronto and noticed that you actually have 4.9 out of 5 stars on your Google rating.
Yeah,
Now, that's pretty incredible, because usually you get the odd, I shouldn't say the odd. Usually the people that are going online to rate these are I would give it 0 stars if I could, but I'm only giving it 1. And you get the upset customers that bring those ratings down. But yours is way up there. I mean, what do you feel that you're doing differently than anybody else that keeps everybody super satisfied and I guess motivates people to write that positive review?
Isn't that the $1 million question? Like, I don't know. I don't know. And you can have a team of marketers who are going to sit around and do pie charts and data analytics and consumer insights and all that stuff. We're not those people. It's me and it's Dick for Drink Toronto. And we're just sort of, cheers. We're just sort of like taking a flyer at it. Where I think the differentiation is that we actually walk the talk. And what I mean by that is we always want to over-deliver. And whether it's on our tour or whether it's on our wine school, whether it's on our patio party, there's no way you can pay for a ticket and say that wasn't worth it. Like, we sweat those details because we're not Coca-Cola, we're not Walmart. We don't have these great big budgets where we can do whatever they do. We just got to be honest, and we've got to be real, and so people love what we do because we go above and beyond. So your ticket price for our most expensive tour, they're not inexpensive. I think the most expensive tour we have is something like $289 for a 5-stop tour. But when you leave there, you go, that was bloody fun. That was a great time. That will stick with me for the rest of my life. I'm glad I did my bachelorette with them or my client team, whatever it might be. And we really, truly sweat those details to make sure that when you're leaving, things are awesome. If, for example, even all of our tour guides, they have the instruction and they have the freedom that should you feel like something wasn't awesome, you make it awesome. If you buy them another round, if you order something, whatever you need to do it to make them say that was freaking great.
Yeah. So you empower your employees.
It's the only way you can do it, in my opinion. If you're going to be that and I hated being micromanaged when I was working for other people. I just found it really insulting and frustrating. Why would I have them working for me if I can't trust what they're going to do? Mm-hmm. Really? To me, that just seems ridiculous.
Yeah. No, it speaks to what you're talking about before and your value, like right from the beginning, and always wanting to provide value. And you always engage people on the level. And we kind of live in this weird world of like ghosting and people just not returning emails and whatnot. And it's really not that hard to provide great customer service. It takes a lot of work to provide excellent customer service, but sometimes like we're just living in a world where people just want a callback.
Well, look, and at the end of the day, I'm not perfect, right? Like, I'm no angel. Customer service is hard. And that means if I need to take a beat, if I'm dealing with somebody who's really challenging and I need to take, a 10-minute walk around the block before I respond to them, then I do. Like, I'm not saying that I'm just some sort of altruistic angel. I'm the only one drinking, though. Maybe that's why I do it so well. Maybe that's why I have my 4.9. I'm already 2 drinks in. So
write your review on the last stop.
Yeah. That's what we do. We're like, tell us now what you think.
That's the secret.
Yeah. But you're 100% right. Like like when somebody's feeling frustrated, no matter if they're calling a call center because their phone isn't working properly, or they just want to make sure that they have the right hotel room because they're going on some special trip somewhere, or whatever the case might be, they deserve to have somebody make them feel better about that purchase. Because once you start becoming really arrogant, and we start seeing this a lot of the time with, like when you start seeing these really big companies where you get in that call, that tree, you can't get through to anybody, you're not inspiring loyalty at all. And all I've got as a small business is to make sure that I get back to people. And you'd be surprised how many people I get back to them. I'm on my phone all the time, and it drives some people crazy, but the people who know me really well, they know that this is just the way my life is going to be for the next little while. We get back to them within an hour. If you phone me at 3 a.m, okay, maybe not. But like we get back to them within an hour. And even if I'm out at another event and I'm the one who picks up the email, then I got this. I've heard you. I'm going to get back to you. People just need to be heard, and that's it.
Yeah, that's great.
And
That's a great
that's where we get people who like what we do.
Where did you learn that from? Or was that kind of
I think
self-taught?
it's self-taught, and I think it just comes down to the do unto others, right? Like do unto others, and I know that I want to feel like somebody. I did read a great book, and your listeners might be really interested in this. It's by Danny Meyer, and Danny Meyer is a. Do you know who he is? He's a fan.
We've already talked about Danny Meyer on the first podcast, actually. Yes.
Well, he's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I wanted to put up on my LinkedIn, and then it happened over the Christmas holidays, so I didn't get to do it. But I read this great book by Danny Meyer called Setting the Table. And he puts a great phrase to it, which is everybody's got a sign around their neck that says, make me feel important. Some glow super, super loud. Some glow not so much, but make everyone feel important. And so we try to do that. We try to be conscious of that. And he just put out trust me, I used to be in broadcasting. I know how to work my way around a microphone. He just put out there was a tweet that came through where somebody tweeted at him something along the lines of, hey, I'm trying to get through to 111 Madison Park or whatever that restaurant was. I can't do it. It's been 8 times. Now I'm hearing my gift certificate won't work. I got this gift certificate for my wedding. He tweeted out back, I'm really bummed to hear that. We haven't owned that restaurant in 7 years, but I'll tell you what, bring your gift certificate to any one of these restaurants that we do own, and we will honor that. And I'm like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Who would actually do that? No one. Everyone says they'll do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
No one actually does that.
Yeah.
And I just think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a great story now.
It's a great story.
Yeah. Now, you're a great storyteller.
Am I? Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell us a story about when you've really had something specific where you've had a really difficult time and how you persevered with the Wine Sisters or Drink Toronto? Okay,
so it all started 9 years ago. So I think one of the things that I've learned from being an entrepreneur is you do need to have those tough conversations. And I do really pride myself on having a lot of good communication. And I do really pride myself now on even making sure I give credit where credit's due. The email I sent, we got a great the last few days, we've got some really, really great feedback about Kyle, who's the executive chef here at Vantage. And, you know, I wanted to make sure that I sent that on because you could keep it and sit on it, but it's not going to help anybody. And I think Kyle was over the moon about it and really quite effusive about those compliments. He wasn't at all. But
thanks for the plug-in, by the way. That's great.
Oh yeah, no problem. I think one of the things that I found the most difficult over this time, and I have a different story than, let's say, some of your other guests that have been on this show or will be on this show, that I've literally bootstrapped everything. And even to the point where I'm a single person, so I don't even have a partner. That if money's not coming in this month, my partner will pick up the slack and pay the mortgage. That's not happening. So I think some of the things that have really been difficult have just boiled down to I think that what everybody experiences, simple cash flow. Right? Yeah. We do a lot of work with a lot of big companies, and a lot of those big companies have 90-day payout terms or whatever the case might be. I know they're going to pay it. I know they're going to be great for it. But until they do, I'm eating rice. So those are the things. And I think the only way that you're going to keep going is to be able to keep going. And you need to have that plan. And I remember very clearly when I opened up the Wine Sisters and I had like a little wine and cheese with some of my closest girlfriends. And it was a summertime, so we were sitting on my balcony. And I was like, you know what, guys? I know there's going to be some tough times ahead. I know that. I also know that I don't know how tough it's going to get. And there are some times where that thing where you hear about people who run businesses having sleepless nights. Yeah, I got $20 in my bank account, baby, and I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to be able. Wow. I've had to go to people, and it's not like I've had to go to my dad and say, hey, Dad, can you spot me a couple grand? Because there's I know I'm a grown adult, and at one point in time I was on the media, but now I need some money. Or, you just need those little things to get you through. Those are not exactly prideful moments. Those are actually quite humiliating moments. But if you love it enough and if you've got enough of a vision, it does get better and it will get better. So I know that wasn't exactly what you were looking for, where, hey, this happened and I don't have one of those exact black and white moments, but I have 9 years of shit.
Yeah. No, I think it's actually is exactly what you're looking for. Like it's a great story. It's the grind.
Yeah, it is the grind.
It is the grind.
And you've got to know why you're doing it.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
That's what motivates.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you talk about cash flow being one of the a challenge at some point. What are some of the other challenges that you face at Drink Toronto and the Wine Sisters?
Well, again, like if we could have a marketing board, sometimes I actually think that's probably is a bit of a detriment to people. But did I hit the microphone again with my wine glass? Because look at, like, these were big pours and you guys still aren't drinking. And I'm like, look at me. I'm about ready for a refill.
I'm almost done. I'm about to refill my own.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
All right, well, when you do that, pour some over here. Some of the biggest challenges, in addition to cash flow, I think marketing and just getting people to know who you are. And I'm lucky in the sense that I've been around for 9 years. But we'll do business, like I said, we do a lot of business with big corporate groups. So it could be a KPMG, could be a Deloitte, could be a bank, could be whatever. And we might do 5 or 6 events with one of these firms a year. And every time I'll say, how did you hear about us? And I'm hoping that somewhere there's some sort of internal Bible or something. Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah,
there's some sort of There's some sort of internal Bible where they're like, oh, well, Mary from accounting recommended you or whatever. No, we just Googled you. And so on one hand, I'm like, great, our SEO is perfect. We're getting Google and you're finding us and our website's doing its job because we're looking like we should. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, how come you bloody people aren't talking to each other so that you can know who we are? So that's a bit of a challenge. Marketing will always be a challenge. Yep. How do we rise above the fray? I think one of the frustrating parts that I'm experiencing lately, and I don't know if there's an answer to it, perhaps you guys do, is 2 things. One, I find that there's now a lot of copycats and everyone says, hey, flattery is the best form, or what is it?
Imitation is the finest form of flattery.
It's not. It's absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's the most frustrating thing that I've had to grind out, and then somebody copies what we do. That's annoying.
Yeah.
But then another frustrating part, and I was debating whether I should put this on my LinkedIn and crowdsource it and get some ideas. But we do both Drink Toronto and the Wine Sisters. I get really excited when I get to make proposals for people because we do really creative, really inventive experiences. And I have no problem sharing everything I know on my social media channels, on my blog. I will share everything on a podcast. But there's probably about 30% of our business 30% of our prospects or 30% of our inquiries will end up going another direction. And a lot of the time it's because I've given, or I feel like it's because I've given these awesome ideas. And now all of a sudden, we've gone actually with somebody, a competitor who's actually cheaper and can do it cheaper. They just fit better with our budget. Or, we've just decided to go a different direction. Or, we've decided to do something. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It just happened to me the other day. And I probably spent about a month between emailing and phone calls and coming up with great ideas, connecting them with awesome people at different venues or who can do really cool stuff. And now you've decided that, you know what, we're just going to scale back a bit because of the budget. So I'm trying to decide right now, currently, my current challenge is how much do I give away? Because I'm legitimately somebody who loves to share these ideas and also that's just how you win proposals. How much do I give away and how much do I hold back until you say, here's the deposit? Yeah. And I don't know what the answer is to that.
Yeah, that's kind of a fine line.
Mm-hmm. So those are some of the challenges that we face a lot of the time.
Yeah, definitely.
So I guess kind of to follow up on that, you talk a lot about the copycats that are coming out. You're starting to see a lot of competition from when you first started both of these ventures to now.
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, I like competition. Competition keeps the best people on their toes, right? And so I always say this. I go to Niagara wine country all the time. And could you imagine, Niagara wine country is majestic, and it's energetic, and it's fun, and it's great. And they get, I don't know, I'm going to say probably easily hundreds of thousands, if not millions of visitors, probably millions. I would bet that they get millions and millions of visitors every year. Why? Because there's 80 some odd wineries throughout the whole Niagara Peninsula. Would they still get that? Would they still enjoy that same tens of millions of visitors if there was only one winery there? So yeah, okay, I guess these 80 some odd wineries have to, divvy up the pie of tens of millions of visitors, but look they're all doing really spectacularly well to some level, plus the spin-offs of restaurants and hotels and so on and so forth. So competition's a good thing. I really do like competition, because if I'm not pulling my weight, well, then I don't deserve to have your business. But I think when people are blatantly taking your things, like I've had people copy my social media posts. Like, come on, dude, don't do that. Like, that's not cool. That's not cool at all. Don't do that. And you can't really call them out on it. It's just a little bit too coincidental. Like, okay. Again, is there an answer for that? I'm not sure. If I was a big company, could I do a cease and desist? I guess. But those are just lives as a little guy, I guess.
Yeah.
One thing that doesn't seem to be a challenge for you is the way that you brand yourself. You've done a great job with your branding of Erin Henderson. You found yourself a great gig as a regular guest on The Social. How have you done that so well? Like, is there a secret sauce to just the way you've been able to brand yourself?
I don't know. Like, these are the worst things, is that I just don't know. I think that so this starts to get a little airy-fairy, so stick with me. But I really believe that the universe pushes you in the direction you're supposed to go. I know this is a little bit, just take a sip of your wine, Andrew.
I'm with you.
Yeah, sure you are. But I think that if I look at my whole life, being in acting for the first 20 years of my life, being a journalist for, the next 10 years, working for other people, as a sommelier, and then really scraping by at the beginning and trying to figure out my way, like literally trying to be like, I don't know what I'm doing at all. And Andrew suffers through a lot of my conversations where I'm like, I actually have zero idea what I'm doing. I think the branding comes in from being as authentic as you possibly can. And that sounds kind of like, do we swear on this podcast or do we not?
No, keep it clean.
Keep it clean? Keep it PG?
There's different ratings.
Okay, so that's kind of like to say be your authentic self is kind of a BS line. Like, it's not, like, what does that even mean? And for example, as I develop my YouTube channel, I've been crowdsourcing, and Andrew's been, getting some emails where I'm like, what do you think of this tagline? And what do you think of this picture? And what do you think? And then, really, like really sweating out one word and sweating out, okay, should I say or the? So you can't, to say to somebody, if you're Ricky Gervais, be as authentic as you want, because whatever, you are who you are. But when you're somebody like me and doing the branding that you do, I think you have to realize, and this is a good story. This is a good story about a mistake that I made about branding. I took on a client that I shouldn't have taken on. And they weren't happy because we just weren't aligned. And I did exactly what I do, exactly what makes the Wine Sisters still in business a decade later, that still has Drink Toronto going 3 or 4 years later, when we all know that small businesses can go belly up at any time. That makes the wine, all of the things that I've done, like, so the exact personality that you see at wine school or wherever I'm doing my thing, or on The Social or whatever, they were a little bit too blue suit, and I didn't realize that they were so buttoned up blue suit. And they weren't exactly delighted by what we do. Like, we're a little bit laid back, cheeky. And that's very intentional, because that's who we are. And to brand myself, I think now I've learned that I really need to be very clear with clients when they come to us. Hopefully our website you'll get that first impression from our website. Hopefully you'll have had a chance to comb through a little bit of our social media, so you get that impression as well. But let's say for whatever reason you haven't bothered to take a deep dive into the website, or even a shallow dive into the website. It's very important to me now to say to clients, you understand, we totally know our stuff. Like, we are certified somms. I've traveled a lot of North America, Europe. I've written for, I am qualified for what I do. But I am not going to be that buttoned up person. And if you're looking for that buttoned up person, you need to go somewhere else. And I didn't do that. That was a couple of years ago. That was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And it's always stayed with me, where they were actually quite disappointed in what we were able to bring to the table, because they really needed that buttoned up person, which we just can't be.
Yeah. Now that you've got two businesses going, and both are, I guess you could say, 3 years, that's established, 10 years established. What's the future look like for both of Wine Sisters and Drink Toronto?
Oh, well, let me get on my shades. Pretty bright. So it's good. It's really good. I'm really excited about the directions of where I'm headed, talking about personal branding. And I'm really excited about where the businesses are going. And so can anything happen at any time? Obviously, right? Like recessions happen, whatever. Things happen. But I feel really solid about both of them. I feel really secure with both of them. I'm not sure if that's also just the benefit of being older and the benefit of being sort of on your own for 10 years or so. But I think that with the Wine Sisters, definitely, we're going to start getting more into a lot more of that educational component. So a couple projects in the work. It's so annoying. It's so annoying when people are like, but I can't talk about it yet. Super annoying to come on these things and then only like drop that clickbait. I hate that. But we've got some great educational components going on in terms of I'll be starting what I hope will be one of those really useful, practical insights, really helpful YouTube channels that will help you understand a little bit more about how to drink like a boss, but not look like a jerk. Similarly, we've got, I think, the wine school that we've got, which is that compilation between Vantage and Drink Toronto. And we just need more people in the boat. Like there's Drink Toronto, there's Wine Sisters, there's Vantage. We've got things are looking fantastic. So things are looking really good. And I'm glad that they're looking really good because 10 years is a long time to grind at something and have it still suck. Yeah. So, no, but seriously, and at 3 years and 6 years, things were sucking. Things were sucking hard, and they're not sucking anymore, which is great. But I also learned from those mistakes. So, I remember when I first started these companies, and it's largely because I hadn't had a company, so I had really no idea what I was doing. And I'm glad that I've really been intuitive enough and reflective enough to look at, okay, these are the things that I did in the past, and this is how I adjust them moving forward, and moving forward with intention.
So then how would you define success? What does success look like to you?
So for me, I think that success is living life on your own terms. And there's a lot of people, and I in comparison is the thief of joy, and I'm not trying to compare myself against anyone or, make myself sound better than them or less than them, but I live a pretty true life. Like I'm absolutely delighted with where I am, and I'm super excited about where I'm going. And I've lived reasonably authentically to me. So I don't have do it.
No, I was moving the microphone away.
So you wouldn't do it? Okay,
yeah.
But you know what? Before we go, I want you to do it.
Oh.
I do.
All right.
So for me, success is I'm living my life on my own terms, which includes personally, professionally, and that's success for me. Mm-hmm. That I can go home at night, I can look myself in the mirror, I can put my head on the pillow and say, I'm not being a jerk about it, but I'm also not making unhappy compromises just because I feel like I need to fit in the mold of what society dictates for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Along your career journey that you've had, starting in broadcasting to being an entrepreneur, I'm sure there were a lot of mentors out there, a lot of people you looked up to, a lot of things you've read and studied. What were some of the best tips that you received, and I guess what have you stolen from the best?
So I have a few of them. I'll tell you one of the earlier ones. So when I was working at the private club in Toronto, it's called the Badminton and Racquet Club, and I worked my way up from starting there as a sommelier, and then I don't know if you're ever in the private club scene. Private clubs, you're like, why were you a sommelier at like a tennis club? That's so weird if you're not part of that kind of situation or that kind of scene. Within private clubs, this particular club had 3 restaurants plus a catering and an events division. So I worked my way up to being a food and beverage manager and or director or whatever. And so I had to report to I was in many cases way over my head. Like I had to do budgets. I had to report to a board. And I was just like, can we just have a drink for God's sakes? Anyway, one of the GM, the general manager of that club, her name is Kathy Bola, and she was really just a lovely human being. So I was probably about 32, maybe 33, maybe 34. I forget. Years blend together because I drink for a living. But she said, and I was having a really hard time. Like I was managing a huge team And, private clubs are kind of like Faulty Tower. Like, it's just crazy. So she sat me down and she said, Erin, and she was, at the time, I think she was probably around 58, maybe 60. And she sat me down and she said, Erin, like we can tell, like, you're going crazy. Like, things are all over the place. And she said, the beauty about getting older is that things soften. And she said, I'm not just talking about your eyesight and your waistline, but I'm talking about like just your emotions. Like, you're no longer up and down on a roller coaster. You've been to this rodeo before and you know how to handle it. So always remember that you will come through this, and it seems like the end of the world, or it seems so like things are on fire. They're not. Don't worry. Everything's cool. Don't freak out about it. And so I thought that was really good. And back when I was doing the news, I remember if things got really tense and I was trying to get the source, or I was trying to get the story done. And then eventually, every once in a while, I'd take a pause and be like, well, 6 o'clock comes, 6 o'clock goes. Either my story's on or it's not. And they'll figure out a way to fill it if it's not. It always made it on. But I think knowing that we get so caught up in the tornado of our own life, especially when things are not going well, that sort of stayed with me, that even when I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? I'm like, ride it out, because it's going to be fine. That was sort of the thing that stayed with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's true. We're not saving lives here all the time, are we?
No. And I also think that some of the things I've learned, and a lot of the times you make those you learn these things because you've made mistakes, and hopefully you're being reflective enough to make those mistakes, like to learn from those mistakes and be reflective of it. But to surround myself with really good people who are much smarter than me. Mm-hmm. And it's always worked out when I have done that, and it's not really worked out when I haven't done that. And so I look around to sort of my circle of colleagues and friends, and I'm like, I really like these people. Like, I don't have idiots in my circle. I have people that I really respect and admire because their strengths complement my weaknesses and vice versa. So I think that there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah.
Now, Erin, I know you spend a lot of time, regimented time, dedicated to consuming content that you think can help you with your business and your personal life and whatnot.
Yep.
What's give us the best? Give us your top one, top two, top three. Give us something that you've been able to use really well.
Okay, so when you say regimented, that's one of the best ones that I've had. And I was actually just listening to a podcast today, and it was with, he's a personal development coach to billionaires, to Oprah, to all these things. His name is Brandon Bouchard. Probably, if people are listening to this podcast, they're probably at least reasonably familiar with this guy. And he reiterated something that's been a constant theme in sort of the professional development, personal development, learning development world, which is live your life with intention. I'm gonna mess up the quote. I'm gonna bugger it up. But the quote is like, high performers don't leave their lives to chance. And if you are just sort of going through that's what it was. It was going through the motions is the death of high performance. So if you're just going through the motions, alarm goes off, I get in my car, I drive to work, I punch the clock, I do my thing, 12 o'clock I go for lunch, whatever, right? If you care to be a high performer, that is not going to get you very far. So even if you're somebody who's become a success for one reason or another, think about how much more successful you could be. So living your life with intention. Living your life because before you know it, you wake up 10 years later and you've lived the same bloody life over and over again. And I'm not saying that every day needs to be climbing Mount Everest. Clearly, that's not going to work for everybody. And clearly, that's just not something. Everybody's going to have a bad day. Things are going to go wrong. Things are going to explode, whatever. But I want to live my life with intention. I want to live my life with clear, defined objectives and goals, because I want, as I said earlier, I'm quite grateful for where I am. You know, if you're living in this country, you're in the top 3% of the world or whatever. Like, I'm doing fine. I'm doing great. But I'm super excited about where I'm going. And to just sort of go through the motions and not push again and push again. Look, we've got a wine school that starts tonight, and we're oversold for all of the classes. And we have, and we have sponsors who are knocking on our door saying, can I do this, that, and the other thing? That didn't come by accident. That came because just like the 4.9 ratings, we over-delivered. And I'm talking about my performance and my company's performance. I'm talking about Vantage Venue bringing the heat, what they needed to bring, and the various teams from service to back of house and the kitchen. Like, that didn't come by accident. That came because we were very intentional about what we wanted to bring. And even though we didn't even necessarily sit down and carve it out in stone and say, oh, our objective and our, our mission statement and our vision statement, we didn't do that. No. But what we all knew and why we all worked really well together is to say, we want to provide people with the best possible experience that they can have so that when they leave here, they say, that was great. Mm-hmm. So when I've got those snippets, I think the biggest snippet is to get up with intention, whether that means being a great dad, whether that means being a great husband, whether that means being a great leader, whether that means, whatever that role means to you, to do it with intention and to do it with integrity and to do it with a focus where you want to go. You want to have a great relationship with your kids when they're older? Great. You said it before, you want to make sure you set those standards and those foundations now. Similarly, for my company, we're small. I'm not going to look, we're small, whatever, but we're chipping away at it, and I haven't lost my house yet, so great. But everything I do is with an intention. Do I succeed every time? No, of course there's swings and misses, for sure. But 4.9, I don't know, you're good at math, Andrew. 4.9 for a batting average, that's pretty good. That's almost batting 1,000. Right?
Pretty darn good.
It's pretty darn good. So those are my intention. I want people to leave and say, my life was just better because I did that.
So you almost answered this question, but tell me maybe something more specific. What are you most proud of?
In my whole life?
Yeah, go whole life.
Ever.
Ever.
Yeah, ever.
History of Erin Henderson.
Yeah.
Well,
it can be. It doesn't have to be one thing. It can be. Let's. You can brag here.
Okay, I'm gonna brag.
A few things.
Well, learning to walk was definitely top, like a top 5 for sure. Like that was challenging.
And you do it well.
Thanks. I do it well. Yeah. Have you seen these shoes?
Yeah.
So, I have to actually say what I'm most proud of is setting my goals and grinding at them until I get them. And I remember when I was 20 and struggling at university. Remember, and you're just like, oh God, I'm so broke, and I'm eating I'm stocking up on craft dinner because it's on sale for 50 cents a box. I went to school in the dark ages, and it really was on sale for 50 cents a box, and I really did stock up. And my mom came over and opened the cupboard and saw 18 boxes of craft dinner and cried. Anyway, that's a story for another day. But I remember when I was in my early 20s and having these visions of living in a big city, Toronto, and having a great place to live, which I do, and having a fabulous circle of friends, which I do, and setting these goals and achieving them. And so when I left media and I started my entrepreneurial company, like I said, I haven't lost it. There's been times I've flown close to the sun, like there is no skin left on my teeth. Like there have been some amazing moments. But I wanted to return to media, and now I am back on the media. And I think having that dedication and that focus and that intention, those are some of the things I'm most proud of, that I generally achieve what I want to achieve. It might take me a few years, but I generally achieve what I want to achieve. And I think anybody can do it. But I think what you need to do is, for me and in my opinion, you write it down, you revisit it, you visualize it, and you keep working towards it, and you realize that, okay, it may not happen by Friday, but it might happen by 2021 or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, we live in a world where there's lots of entrepreneurs out there that raise some capital and they don't go through that same grind that you just described. So
yeah, I don't get that. I want to be one of those people.
That's pretty unique. That's pretty awesome.
I had to stop listening. Like I used to be addicted to the Forbes and success list, like the 15 things that successful people do, and the 5 things that unsuccessful people do, and the 10 things that da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't listen to this anymore, because all it does is make me feel like a loser that I haven't. No, truly, it makes me feel like a loser. Like you listen to Joe Blow, woke up one morning, decided he was going to start an app, and by the end of the day raised $4 quadrillion in round 8. And I'm like, what? I'm not a unicorn, and I want to be a unicorn, but I'm not a unicorn. And now I feel like I'm doing massive, like it just hurt my psyche, and I had to stop. And I can't listen to those things anymore.
Yeah. After our talk today, I can see exactly why Drink Toronto has that 4.9 rating. It's true. Because
I bring the wine?
Exactly. Because my glass is empty. That means it was good wine that you brought. Yeah, Erin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for
sharing
having
your
me.
experiences and your insight. Really is an awesome story, and the knowledge that you've been able to share with everybody's been impeccable.
Oh,
Thank you so
That's
much.
so kind of you. Thank you very much. It was a delight. It was really a delight.
It's a lot of fun, for
Yeah.
sure.
Thanks.
Thanks, Erin.
Thanks, Erin.